Yes, yes, people. Welcome to the AfroFinLab, members of the decentralized movement. Today we have Mercy telling us about the West African Decentralized Alliance, and we'll also be talking about problems with governance. Who is a leader in a decentralized movement? How do we solve this problem of, knowing who to answer to or who takes the lead, etc.? Yeah, so Mercy, would you like to just tell us a brief introduction regarding yourself and how you came up with the idea for the WADA?
Okay. So as we all know, my name is Mercy. Maybe some of us in the audience don't know, but well, my name is Mercy, and I am currently spearheading the West Africa Decentralized Alliance. And when I say that I'm spearheading, it's just right now I'm the one sort of being the lead because behind West Africa Decentralized Alliance, there's just a great, fantastic team. We have, there's Azeez on this call, there is Sidney, who happens to be one of our Council of Elders. But basically the idea for West Africa Decentralized Alliance is just the fact that, if we've all been following IOHK, or even what Charles says, or what even Emego, we realize that there's a lot of focus in terms of, Cardano being a blockchain that banks the unbanked, basically. And IOG has been, they've spent a lot of time doing a lot of work in Africa, in East Africa, in South Africa. But then there was a point that sort of realized that there wasn't a lot of talk about West Africa. And being somebody that I've worked in a project and it subsequently turned into an NGO in West Africa. I had my university education in West Africa. So I sort of know the lay of the land quite a bit and how, communities and networking and, all those kind of linking works. So I decided that, maybe this is something that we could do. So, been thinking about it. At some point, Emergo had a plan to it was some kind of a D-Lab thing, and I think they're still doing it. But I applied to that. It didn't work out because they were mostly focused on dApps. And then Project Catalyst came along, and I realized, okay, so maybe we have our chance now. So basically, that's where we are at this moment. There's lots of things. In terms of WADA and what it brings and some of the problems it tries to solve. We talk about decentralization, we talk about governance, and I don't want to hog the show. So this is a very brief introduction. If there is any questions, please fire away. But I believe that today we are having Sidney also give a lot of input from his wisdom as well.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tisoma.
No, that's great. Thank you for the introduction, Mercy. So I just want to ask, so what made you see WADA as a solution? Like, what kind of problems are there in West Africa currently that you feel WADA could solve?
Okay, so and I think it was you, Teshoma, who said at some point, I think it was in chat somewhere, that Africa has jumped from sort of cash to, they just hopped over laptops and desktops and they just went straight into mobile phones. So when you talk of Africa, and specifically I'm talking about West Africa, sometimes things move very quickly, but there are sometimes too that there are endemic barriers that makes things don't move as quickly as everybody would want. And when blockchain, when you talk to anybody in the blockchain, especially those from Africa or those who have interest in Africa, there's one thing that we are hoping don't happen, that the blockchain revolution will just jump over us. And then it's going to take centuries for us to catch up again. So that is first and foremost the main thing, that we do not want this revolutionary technology to pass over Africa, to pass over West Africa. And right now, there is a lot happening from Nigeria to Ghana to Senegal to Guinea, all those Mali, all those places. Like there's rumblings, whether it's digital or it's a blockchain, there is something happening. And when we look at from a Cardano perspective, Cardano has been built right. But there's also quite, throughout the blockchain world, there is a lot of protocols that haven't been built that right. And the fear right now, or the concern right now, is that because Africa is sort of like we're in a hurry, we want to catch up. They might use some protocols that are not as effective as we would want it to be. And once those protocols are adopted, it becomes a bit difficult to undo what has been done. So, that's one of the main things that give us the urgency that we need to do it, because, there's a lifetime for an opportunity, right? And we feel that this is the lifetime of this opportunity, and we have to move in and we have to do it right. We don't want things to be done in a centralized way, or if it's being done in, sort of a decentralized way, we're hoping that it's done the right way. So, I can go on and on. If anybody wants to chip in, please feel free to chip in.
Yeah. So, I mean, how is that actually implemented then? I mean, so the goal of WADA is to educate and spread the technology throughout West Africa. But I mean, how is that decentralized then, right? I mean, because I guess it would be you or Sydney or this organization pushing that effort forward. So at what point does it become decentralized, and what does that look like for our viewers?
I could jump in there. So I think that, like, this conversation about decentralization, because I've had an opportunity to think about it a little bit, and in voting and governance and all of these types of things are so there's the technology part of it, right? So this idea of Cardano and then all of the other networks out there, initially initiated by Bitcoin, these are decentralized infrastructures. They do facilitate, I think, to some degree, decentralized social contracts. But at the end of the day, it's infrastructure. It's a way to get something to happen in a decentralized way. It's a way to vote where you're not relying on, maybe the municipal, city, state or federal government. It's a way to have input on projects without having to talk to the people at the top, in a sense, running the project. So I think, I know that, like with the Catalyst project, there's a lot of experimentation going on with like how what decentralization is, how it works, and how do you keep it going. And I know that, like I say, Catalyst is an experiment. But the information is being rolled over from Catalyst into the protocol is really about how do we ensure that the protocol is moving in a direction that reflects all of the people that are kind of stakeholders in the network. So I do think that there are a bunch of different kind of conversations going on there. I think personally, like with governance of people, you have voting, you have leadership, you have vision, and with protocols like Cardano, you have an infrastructure in order to realize those things. But the protocol itself is not the vision. You know what I mean? The protocol itself facilitates voting, and the protocol itself is not per se governance. It's a mechanism that allows us to govern ourselves more effectively, if that makes sense.
Got it. Got it. So, did you get all of that, Azeez? Did you understand everything there?
I did not. I completely understood everything that you guys were saying, and I completely agree with it. I think one thing with blockchain in general, I think it is going to help ensure that money gets to the right places.
Okay.
Because one thing we're even seeing with developing countries is that it's not that there's not money there, it's that it disappears into certain holes and we don't know where it goes. Blockchain technology is that distributed ledger that will show us that, okay, this money did go to that business idea, and the whole world can see that, and we know it went there, and there's not a question of where did the money go kind of thing. We can ensure that it gets to the right places, to ensure that the infrastructure is laid down.
Sorry, Azeez, you broke up there.
Yeah,
Looks
we
like
just lost you for a minute.
Yeah, looks like we're having some internet issues currently.
He started talking about infrastructure and the internet proved the point.
Yeah. So just picking up on his point, it stops money from getting lost when you're trying to deploy these funds on the ground. But I mean, in the case of WADA, I mean, what does that look like? You know, for someone who maybe heard about WADA and wants to get involved, I mean, they have to come to you to ask for the money, or is it voted on by the community? How does that look?
I mean, I can talk a little bit about why I'm interested in WADA. Like, for a complete decentralization of, you know, or should I say, for Africa to completely embrace decentralization or see that process happen, there needs to be like a gradual rollout, right? So like, let's say, WADA in my mind would be like the first demonstration of the possibilities that needs to happen. There needs to be an entity like that happening, or else the entities that we need to actually embrace this thing, they're not going to embrace something in the sky, something they don't understand or can't relate with directly. So that's why WADA is so important. But that's how I think about it. So, you know, it's really brilliant if you're thinking about actually having us embrace this in West Africa. The government needs to say, okay, this is a body that understands decentralization, that's going to demonstrate how we're supposed to use it. So in my opinion, I think that's why, you know, WADA is important. And thanks, Mercy, for, you know, pushing this.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, thanks, Josh. You know, like when we talk about WADA, you know, it's everybody. It's what James is doing with Gimba Labs, is what Liquid and DC and Josh and Tashoma are doing with Liquid. Basically, you know, like when we talk about West Africa, we talk about the issues there, right? And there's a population of what, almost 400 million. So that's a huge area to try and say that, okay, this is what we are going to do. But when you look at the whole blockchain decentralized movement, you know, once anybody catches the vision, people are running with it, right? You know, like it just has a way of just catching you. And then, you know, once you understand that you want to do something. So you know, so first of all, we have to show, right? If we are bringing a message, we have to show the message more or less. So as an organization, as WADA, you know, how decentralized are we? And I'm not saying that right now we have the answers, and this conversation is part of trying to tease out some of those answers. Mm-hmm. But what we are looking at is that, yes, so we are starting with a core group. But as we grow, we are looking at people who live in West Africa. We're also, of course, talking about the diaspora, you know, like people who have interest in West Africa, but they live elsewhere. You know, sometimes people might trace their genealogy to West Africa, you know, all those people. But for a start, we're actually looking at people wherever they are. What skills do they have? You know, what kind of leadership do they have in their experience and in the things that they do? Bring it on, you know. I think that we had a bit of a discussion with Azeez, and he was mentioning, you know, some friends who are designers, and they were thinking, okay, do we also fit into this blockchain business? And absolutely they do. Why? Because when it is decentralized, we don't have, you know, like we don't have a boss. And I know that sometimes, Sidney does give very good points in terms of, how decentralized are we. And last week we did talk about the fact that we, it's a process. It's a bit like a hockey stick. We start and then we sort of go right up there. But in our ideal world, when we have been successful, what we are looking at is, Josh is bringing whatever skill. If he's training developers, he's doing that to the full extent, and he has that freedom to do it, and he has that support to do it. If somebody is a designer, they have the full backing, and the technical support, the financial support. There's this a young man that I work with, his name is Epistle. I found him on Twitter. I had been following him for a while, so I know that he was very passionate about Cardano. And once I heard about Project Catalyst, I said, oh, you know what can we do? You are in Ghana, what are the problems? And this guy just jumped, he just jumped at the vision. So what he does is that he designs logos, right? So I told him, okay, so this is WADA. Look at the proposal, read it, and then come up with a logo. He did come up with a logo, and from my experience, somebody doesn't do a logo once and then you accept it. So I'm like, no, there has to be something wrong with this logo. I have to improve it in some way. And once he told me the story behind the logo, the way he had designed it, with those dots, and you look at the Cardano logo and the dots, and, once he gave me that rationale, I realized that, this is somebody who actually understands. And in everything that he has done, whether developing our website or whatever he's done, he's actually taken on, it's like it belongs to him. So a time comes that I realized that, no, this is not mine anymore. It's actually his as much as it is mine, because he is bringing his business. We have somebody who is a developer. He is very busy right now, but he has also taken the vision. And, as time goes on, what he could do, and he has said that he would do that already, is to, bring on these developers. Right now, we are still looking at ways to engage. But I'm not even just talking about even just those people on the ground and what kind of problems that they can solve. I'm also talking about, people in this ecosystem, in this Cardano ecosystem. As I said, right now we need lots and lots and lots of education materials. That is how we will, we'll jump onto workshop maybe. A time may come when we would need to maybe set up a stake pool. We don't know. Once we bring more new people in, and Zoe pool and POA, the free saturation and stuff, we might have to set one up, and then we will, reach out to people like Josh to help set that up. So that is how we are showing that we are being decentralized. So, once we have built that kind of structure, and as I've mentioned before, from a Sydney's perspective, we are having this council of elders, and they are, people who are busy in their own lives, but they have that life experience, and then they're able to, sort of give us that kind of direction. So within the ecosystem, within IOG, all that IOG is doing, with what the foundation is doing, what Imego is doing, there's just a lot that we can actually coordinate, network, and bring, especially to West Africa. And then that is when the solutions come in, whether it's micro-lending, whether it's digital ID, whether it's the voting infrastructure, whatever it is. Once we're able to say that, okay, whatever individual you are, or whatever groups you are, this is how you get on, and this is how you can bring value. I forgot to mention one other guy that we have, he's in Guinea, and, he was in one of the Cardano Telegram groups. And as soon as he came in, the first thing that he said is, do we have a translation? We need French translation. So he brings that, everybody brings that. And in my mind and in my eyes, that is what I see, decentralized. People bring their best selves, and they bring their best skills, and they own it. They take a piece of the cake and they own it, and they are running with it.
philosophy. So how do you keep people accountable though, right? Because, you know, passion is only good for the start, you know, it does wane out at some course, you know, during the process. So how do you keep people accountable and ensure that they're still delivering a good work? And is there a process about to go about that?
Is that where smart contracts would come into play?
Yeah, that definitely. And you know, like the question of accountability, it happens in levels. You know, there's people that, you know, even with the Cardano protocol, people talk about decentralization of the protocol. I've, you know, taken a look at the work of just over this past couple of days of Plato and the Republic and all of those conversations that were had um, about voting and who should vote. And there's some real questions to be answered there, because if you own ADA and you know nothing about blockchain, because we're bringing people into blockchain all the time, you own ADA, you know nothing about blockchain. All you know is that you have ADA, and every once in a while you get some type of percentage, you know, some interest that's credited to it, or you make some money off of it or something like that. But because of the amount of ADA that you have voting rights on the protocol. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So I think the governance portion of it, the responsibility portion of it, all of those things kind of happen in layers. And there are going to be people that, and I'm just using this as an example, but there are going to be people that are probably at the bottom of the pyramid that don't have enough understanding of the protocol to be able to make wise decisions on the direction of the protocol. And I know typically the way that these protocols run is that the main incentive is money, right? You get some type of value out of it. I think that incentive alone would probably you know, get people to operate you know, kind of in a certain way based on if they do it this way, there's an opportunity that they're going to get more money. If they do it this way, you know, maybe they're not going to get as much money. So they're going to be incentivized to vote based on the idea of being able to get additional value from their tokens or ADA or whatever. But that still doesn't make them an expert in the protocol. And this was the whole argument, you know, with Socrates and Plato and, you know, about democracy, is that, you know, should you have people that don't understand how, in a sense, the democracy is supposed to run, voting for the person that they want running the democracy? And there's probably some, it depends on who you ask, right? Here in the States, we're red and blue. I guess purple now too. But you know, one side of the coin would say, you know, the last 4 years were the best 4 years of American history. And then there's another coin that would, the other side of the coin might say that the last 4 years were the worst 4 years in American history. You know, we all kind of came together and we had the opportunity to vote again. But the people that are voting and the people that we're voting for may not necessarily represent the best direction for the country, you know. So with decentralization coming, I do think that there's going to be a greater opportunity to refine that process, because I don't think we're there just yet. And I think the last, you know, several years in this country has proved that. But this is something that we kind of talked about a little bit. Like if people, if you don't have a, and I'm gonna use names. If you don't have a Joe Biden or a Trump to vote for, what if you have, you know, if those things are kind of broken down a little bit, you know, maybe some of the positions that they hold, or maybe some of the projects that they want to, you know, push forward. If you can, you know, maybe you know, vote on kind of those things, as opposed to the character, maybe we might better represent what we want to have happen socially in our world. But we just went from one character to another character, and that's the way that things kind of work in our democratic system. And I just think with these new systems coming online, that you know, it's this is still an experiment. The whole thing is an experiment where we're trying to figure out how we all get on the same page about, you know, first of all, being human beings, and, you know, what it means to be a human being, what does the future look like for human beings, and what type of things should we get in place in order to make sure that we realize that future. And before, it's been really tough to do that because of the way systems have been, they just haven't been able to support that. But now that we can kind of refine how this idea of everybody participating in the system works, maybe we might get to another place where we're not fighting against the character. We're not saying that, I hate Trump, so Trump should be out of office, or I hate Biden because Biden should be out of office. But it's more about like, who are we as a social unit, the human family? Where should we be going? Number one, that's the vision. Like, we don't have that right now. And it's awesome that we have a new president. And I think he's actually or president-elect, I think he's articulating something that a lot of people feel regarding, like, we need to figure out how to, number one, be together and not like be at each other's throats. But like some of those basic things, I think that these systems are going to help support the person that maybe grows up in Metro Detroit, or the person that is in Beverly Hills, California right now, be able to see where there's commonality and be able to kind of join in a way where they can say, okay, well, these are the things that we support and we believe in. How can we use this system to get everybody on the same line, get some consensus around some idea that we have for our human family, and be able to vote on it. So like with the decentralization, I kind of look at it, that way. It's an opportunity, it's an experiment, and definitely like Cardano and the rest of the protocols are not going to fix our social issues. They're offering an infrastructure that allows us to further refine how we relate with each other socially.
And like, as I said, definitely I don't have all the answers. I don't think Sidney has all the answers. So it would be nice, James, if you have anything to say, or DC, if you have anything to say. But when it comes to, I just want to go back to what Teshoma said in terms of how do we make people accountable? Like, how do we ensure accountability? And when people are bringing their best selves, when they are bringing their own business, like their skills, they want to do that. That in itself is a big incentive. So if, say, somebody says, somebody is an artist, this person is known to be an artist, and they say that, okay, I'm going to draw this, for WADA, I'm going to draw this, this particular art piece, and then maybe, put it on the blog, sell it or something like that. So we come to that agreement, right? They are going to draw that. And then we say that, okay, once we see you drawing it, when you are say a third, or maybe before you start, we'll give you this amount of money. And then when you're halfway, we see that you're doing it, halfway, then we give you that. Then once you complete, we give you that. So, how I'm seeing this and how we're thinking that we're going to operate is that people come to be part of the team and they say that, okay, this is what we are going to bring. And this is how much we're going to, incentivize the person. And then, maybe in blocks of 2 or blocks of 3, we release payment in that way. I don't know if that's the question that you were getting to, and I don't know if James or DC also has something to add.
I think Azeez kind of brought that up regarding how smart contracts could help to maybe implement something like that. The question is, how is quality managed, and also, if you're talking to freelancers, that's not necessarily a contract that they're used to. Typically it's like 1 or 2 iterations and then the payment's received in full. So, in terms of bringing people on board, that's where my head goes. Like, what are you doing to actually make it attractive to people on the ground in Africa, who might want to be involved in something like this when, they have their bills to pay, etc.
So that's the reason that I said that when people hear about blockchain and once they understand it, it has, it has an impact on people. People want to own it and people want to do it. But you are absolutely right. There are some people, like I have a friend, like double masters, has an MBA from University of Michigan. And there's no way that I've been able to convince them that, blockchain is wonderful, right? So there are some people that it will never, will never be able to convert them. But I think that what DC said last week in terms of everybody wants to be paid for their skills. So if they are good at something, whether it's being a developer or being whatever they are, once you tell them that, okay, so we want you to deliver this service and this is how much we're going to pay you for, everybody will, anybody will do that. For the blockchain enthusiasts, they go the extra mile, I would say, because sometimes the amount of hours that I put into all this, if it was my day job, I would have been making a lot more money than I would ever make, with Cardano. So that is how I see it. People would come in based on their skills, even if they don't, they don't buy into all this blockchain stuff. And maybe as time goes on, once they actually understand it and they see that it's not all fraud and scams, then maybe they will also jump on board. But for now, I think that we have two ways that we can do this. People come in with their passion and their skills. And also, even for those who don't have the passion in terms of they don't really understand where we're going with this, they also come in just because they have the skills and just because maybe they're good at organizing or they're good implementers. And we say that, okay, let's do this project. You are the project manager. When you deliver on A, B, C, and D, you get that. And when you are done, you get that. So that's how I am seeing it. If there are any questions or somebody wants to add anything, that would be great.
I think within you saying that people, when they have the passion, they're willing to work that extra bit, and when they understand, I guess, blockchain technology, it kind of cements the fact that we need to get knowledge about blockchain technology out there. Through meeting Josh, I've now realized that it is very important, and it's essential. Like right now, understanding blockchain needs to get out there to the masses, because that's when we will have people working towards whatever protocols, projects, funds, whatever it may be, to the best of their ability when they do understand it more. Even for myself, like when I first got introduced to blockchain, when someone was talking to me about it first, I could have been just thinking about the money. But then when I saw what the technology was really about, now I'm sitting at home trying to figure out how can I make resources for people to learn about it. But that came from me really understanding technology. So it almost sounds like before maybe some people get to work on a project or whatever it may be, they need to show that they have a certain IQ level of blockchain, that they understand it to a certain extent before they take the next step. Even with the voting thing, you could have a bag of 100,000 ADA coins for all I care. That's your business. But if you don't understand blockchain, you may just be waiting for the price to go up and you'll sell it and disappear, and that's it. You're not really you're invested, but you're only invested to the extent that you're going to make money. You're not invested to the extent that it's going to help your fellow man or woman.
Yeah, if I could add, even more than just investments and incentives and the tech, which is all super important. I think we have to look at the higher level of where blockchain is right now and where we need the tech to be for any app dev to just pick it up and run with it, right? We're, especially for Cardano, even with Ethereum, we're simply not there yet. We're not at the level of, blockchain has its WordPress or its Wi-Fi moment to the point where anyone who's a dev or a non-dev or just a new coder who's picking up the platform for the first time can run with it. You just have to be realistic about, when you'll get there, time that up with the expectations, with the education piece, because I think that's, it's like this, right? In the early 2000s, if you went to a mobile, app developer and was like, what do you do? And they're saying, I develop mobile apps on iOS and Android. You'd be like, what are you doing? Like, no one who uses that. Where's their consumer fit? Where's your product market fit? what are the numbers? You know, barely anyone actually at that time was in that market. But if you were developing on, you know, Java or JavaScript at that time, just traditional web apps, that was completely normal, right? Fast forward to 2015, if you're not doing something with, you know, mobile app development in your stack, you know, what are you even doing at all, right? So in a decade's time, everything basically shifted. So the same thing's going to happen with blockchain. It's really just a matter of time of when the tech is going to catch up to the ability for just the everyday software dev to pick it up and run with it. Education is a piece of that, but I also think that just being realistic of where we are on the like tech adoption curve is actually super important for talking about some of the things and just how easy it's going to be to build some of these things on blockchain.
I want to jump in there. Oops.
I was just going to, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Azeez.
I was just going to say, I 100% agree with you in terms of, Dewayne, DC, in terms of the technology adoption curve. Something that people need to remember is that that's just the way technology goes. There's always going to be the people at the beginning that first adopt it, and then the masses adopt it, and then it goes mainstream. And it's just always the way technology goes, sadly. And some people may be sitting around like, oh, but nobody's using it now. But it's going to take time. How long have we been hearing about Bitcoin with all its ups and downs? When I first got introduced to Bitcoin again, I thought like Bitcoin was dead and gone. And then I looked at the price of it and I was just like, wait, this thing is still worth that much? So just give it time and you're going to see, I think anyways, that more people will get into this space. Like,
yeah, I agree.
I think that's a given that, yes, like soon we're going to see mass adoption at some point in the future. But then it begs the question, then what is the urgency of educating people now in West Africa? I mean, you know, everyone else has a benefit.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on what DC said. Absolutely, DC. I mean, you're right on point. I think what's different now, though, is like how the adoption curve grows is different than it's been ever in the history of mankind, period. Because
100%.
we don't because it's decentralized, right? And we're not waiting for venture capitalists necessarily, or, you know, we can fund these products ourselves. We can fund these products with, you know, people in our neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's so the pace that it's going to grow is going to be exponential, and it is. It's going to happen. Boom! It's like one day we're going to wake up, and the majority of people are still not going to know what blockchain is. Right. You know, just like. Yeah, they won't. You know, just like the same analogy that I use with the car. Most people don't know how to, you know, work on the engine in a car. You know, they know how to drive it, but they don't know how to work on it. And that's what it's going to look like. You're going to have probably not even going to have a debit card. You're going to have a phone, and you're going to be able to walk into the store and you're going to be able to purchase stuff, or your utility grid is going to be sitting on top of a blockchain where it's running more efficient, and you can exchange value a lot easier, or any of those type of things. So it's right there. And, you know, like the Bitcoin point, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the last 10 years, whether people like it or not. It's adopted. You know what I mean? It's there. It is the period. It's the best performing asset in the last 10 years. And people are a little leery of moving over to it because they don't quite, people that are handling, you know, other people's money, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, you're not just going to move somebody's portfolio into Bitcoin. There is a learning curve that needs to happen there. But in a general sense, I think we're getting there. And, you know, again, to your point, DC, I think that like the way I think about it is the idea and the technology is here. It exists on our planet today. And for me, it's like getting people to start dreaming again about the possibilities, because now you can do it. You know, like people had these ideas about feeding the world and, you know, all of this other kind of stuff. You know, there wasn't an infrastructure in place to be able to even start to approach something like that. You know, now this technology gives us that promise. It's not there yet, to your point, DC. You know, it's not there, but the idea is that we can dream about it in a way where it's not this way far off thing that'll never happen. It's really close, and it's really good to start having people who you know, have visions about these things, or dream about these things, putting their dreams and visions on paper, because the infrastructure is going to be there in order to support what they want to do.
Yeah, it's iterative. And to your point, you asked this question of why should we push adoption and education in West Africa now? I think that, and you kind of summed it up really nicely here, Sydney, but the way I think about it is we have this model now where, okay, before in Web 2, the value of software was at the protocol layer and at the application layer, right? HTTP, right? We got the web apps that are built on top of that entire infrastructure stack. And that is actually what's valuable, right? The companies built attached to them and the enterprise code and the source code that they own, that's a result, but the actual value is the software, right? For the first time ever in Web3, we're saying there's a token that's attached to the software that almost gives you right to use the services that are created on top of the software, right? Not only can you then say no, enterprise closed source, everything is open. By means of everything being open, you actually directly capture value by just the token. So it's not just software eating the world; it's software and the people who own this token, with the rights to govern the future protocol. Those are actually the owners and the value captures in the system. So Cardano, ADA, Liquid token, like all of these things work the exact same way. You're saying the governance, the actual voting rights to the future of the system are given to those who use the protocol, those who maintain it, those who work for the system, right? I think that incentive model, that whole crypto economic incentives, right? That is what makes this whole iterative process real. It's not that you have to be at that final form end goal just yet. It's that we have this token that bonds us all to this software platform, and we can iteratively improve this thing because we know that as we improve this thing, the future value scales. It's just a 1-for-1, right? So that level of incentive play is so naturally aligned in crypto that thing, I don't think you've ever seen anything like that before blockchain. So I really do think like that is the killer app. I see all these enterprise blockchains and they're great and I'm sure they have their use cases, but when you compare it to what just natural crypto incentive means to just any developer around the world, that to me is a 0 to 1 that we've actually never seen in human history. So I agree with you, Sidney.
That's a very interesting point you made there, DC. So essentially, there's a two-part aspect to this. You have the governance side, but then also the application at the end of it, that the user is benefiting from. So what's different to now as compared to back then is before Facebook would just come into Africa and you would use Facebook, but not necessarily have any say in it as to how it works or how it develops in the future. So I guess WADA is solving the issue of giving West Africans a say in what these systems are going to do and how they're going to work in West Africa, because we know they're coming, right? And I think it's just interesting to look at, okay, well, what is the risk of, if we don't do this education now? I mean, what does that future look like? I mean, is it such a bad thing if a decentralized protocol comes into Africa? I mean, it's decentralized, right? So it's a community. It's going to be looking out for the majority of users who, implement it. Is it just a wealth opportunity cost in a sense? Like, is this?
I think it's the tool. It's a recognition of the tool. Everything that happens outside of us is an extension of us in some way, shape, or form. I mean, your car is an extension of you running or walking. You know what I mean? Everything outside of us is an extension of us, and it's just a tool. So at the end, it's about, I think part of the education part of it is helping people understand, like, yeah, that problem can be solved now. Yeah, you can't get capital into your community. Yeah, we can do that now. Oh, you don't have identity. Oh yeah, we got that too. You know what I mean? So these types of problems that have been long-standing problems in West Africa and on the continent as a whole, and in a lot of other places in the world, those things are shifting, and this group is such a great group, that I think we all want to see kind of the evolution of how we interact with each other and how our worlds work. So I think part of the education, again, for us is helping people understand, like, yeah, you can get that well in your village now, and this is how you do it, and you can do it right through your cell phone, and we got you, and you can get value transfer or capital transfer from wherever else in the world, and we can build this thing that you want to build in your village. Oh, you have this idea of something that hasn't existed in your village before? Yeah, we can support that idea. We can get people together to take a look at the idea, and then we can push value in your direction so that you can build that idea. And then all of the people that are in your community that have heard you talking about this idea for the last 10 years that you haven't done anything with, they can participate in the value creation there. So I think it's, again, I mean, because what were the possibilities before the internet? I mean, what before the internet got here, I mean, the possibility, in my opinion, it seemed like they were more limited than they are today. When the internet got here, it was like, oh my God, you can do what? And you can build this, and you can talk to this person, and you can make music with this person, and all of this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's significantly shifted how our world works and how we relate socially to each other. And I think that this blockchain technology is the next, just the next evolution of that, where we get to participate with each other in a way that's not just democratizing publishing and information, but we get to do that with value now. So we get to we get to feed the people. we get to build the schools, and it's not something that's controlled by the people, by only the people in that community and how they manage those resources. We can bring resources in and get people moving towards what's important for them in their communities.
Yeah,
I think something that's important to note is that it's one thing to even bring the resources in, but it's another thing for the people on the ground to be the tools being put into their hand, and they are the ones that are creating the value for themselves and their community. Okay, I'm from Nigeria, but here I could go back home and people are like, who the hell is this guy? I don't know him. But if I gave somebody the tool to create something themselves, they made it themselves. It's not me. You created that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what you can do for your own people yourself, not somebody else from far away or whatever it may be. You guys did that in your own village. And that's very powerful when someone creates it themselves, or you give someone the tool and put it in their hands and they make it themselves. They appreciate it a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about. I know I'm all about education, but it has to be a hybrid of education and solution, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like the solution, if a small group of people can understand this thing, it's going to have a cascading effect for sure. Like people that use USSD, like grandmas, old people are using USSD code to make transaction and all that. There's no possible way they can understand what USSD code is, but it is a solution. So they embrace it faster because it's making their life easier. So in terms of blockchain, I feel like as much as we preach about this thing, it's not gonna enter everybody's head. But build a solution, build a solution that's blockchain based, and then it's gonna be organic. You are going to be forced to use it because that's the new wave. That's the only way you can get from point A to point B, and everybody using it. So I'm thinking we have to talk about the the intricacies of the underlying tech, but not everybody will get it. We don't need to tell everybody. We don't need to tell 1.3 billion people. We can tell as much people that are willing to listen, but once you build solution, that is going to drive adoption faster than education.
100. 100.
The whole world is going to use
totally agree.
Yeah. Let me just throw this in here. Thanks for that. Yeah, and in addition to education, I think another thing too is how are we priming ourselves to listen, right? Because the only way that we can actually bring solutions, Josh, like you've said, is how are we listening? Like, okay, what's the issue? When we look at the traditional, what we have been used to, okay, let's look at Facebook, let's look at Google. The money that has flowed into Facebook and into Google is, it's I don't want to use the word exploitation, but it's sort of one or two or three people, having the idea and sort of selling a product to everybody else, right? Whereas in this world, this brave new world that we are trying to create, we are flipping the script. That now, instead of just two or three people selling a product to a billion people, now why don't we let all the billion people sell products to each other? Why don't we do that? And the only reason that we can do that effectively is, yes, education is key, but also, are we listening to each other? What problems do you have? I mean, how does that impact your life, either negatively or positively? And whatever solution we are bringing, will it work? You know, are we really listening? So I think that when it really comes to this decentralized world, one thing that we also really have to get right, and that I'm hoping that WADA gets right. And I think that with sort of, you know, the way that we are planning to, you know, people in their communities, wherever they are, whatever they are, whatever they can bring, you know, once, because they are closer to the problem and because they can hear the problem from, whether it's their grandmother or whoever it is, you know, they are able to, even if the grandmother is not able to articulate the problem, the grandchild is able to articulate and is able to say, bring it to the closest developer. And then, you know, we are all building and we are all sharing and we are all, you know, bringing the solutions. I'm seeing something here in the chat. And what somebody is saying is, no, so, okay, take it up.
We've got 20 minutes left for questions and answers. So we have a few questions here from Izu, one of our attendees. So, okay, so Africa has a population of over 1.3 billion people. CNN report said that 120 million people use social media, especially Facebook, i.e. 9% of the African population. How do we get blockchain to those who are not using social media?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, again, I think to Josh's point, they're not going to be using blockchain. They're going to be using some kind of app. And there's going to be an infrastructure that's in place underneath that app that's called blockchain, or So again, like what to Mercy's point, what problems need to be solved? You know, we need to listen, you know, to what problems need to be solved, and you know, again, to Josh's point, we need to develop solutions. If solutions are being developed to the problems, adoption is like, I mean, that's nothing. You know, that's, people it'll catch on like wildfire. But we really have to just make sure that we're understanding the problem, and that we're listening, you know, to the problem, and that we're including the people that we're supposedly helping in the solution, you know, and they will take ownership of the solution and push the thing forward. So Facebook doesn't strike. I mean, yeah, I think the adoption is going to come down to you know, us understanding the problem, and us having a way for people to participate in developing a solution to that problem.
Yeah, I think we understand part of the problem too, right? Like bad voting systems, bad digital healthcare and digital record systems, bad financial systems that don't actually allow access to 2/3 of the world, right? So we actually understand some of the problems. And guys, in America, we have the same issues. Like, look at this last election. It was horrendous watching how long it took just to count some votes that you had to, you know, do all by paper and mail in, right? So no one's got it solved, you know, even the people who think they do really don't. And blockchain gives us just base decentralized tools in the case of Cardano that we can use to reconstruct some of these systems. I think you're right, to Mercy, to Sidney's point, we do have to customize these to different regions, to select use cases, because these things mean different things, right? Tokenizing a home in Port Harcourt or in Lagos, Nigeria, and selling that on an open exchange looks very different than doing the same exact thing in Switzerland or doing it in America, right? So we have to make sure that the folks who are actually using this on the ground, the ones who are building it and developing it, we're listening to them when we're actually creating these. Otherwise, it's just going to be, you know, another thing that Facebook or Google tried to implement in the East, and it just never.
And Tashoma, I think to your earlier questions, that's where we get creative about how to decentralize things. You know, to how do we get the people that are on the ground to be able to, you know, participate in, you know, solving, you know, identifying, and then, you know, helping, you know, people that are developers, you know, project managers, blah, 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 build the right thing for their community.
Also, we've got, I love Mercy's phrase, we've got people who caught the vision, you know, and a lot of us are here already, and people are going to keep catching the vision and figuring out at a basic layer how to contribute and participate. And at the other end, obviously not everybody's going to be building dApps and writing smart contracts, right? But can we just empower a few more people to know what's going on there? And I love that example of people in communities being able to talk to the local devs to get done what needs to get done. That's pretty amazing. So Sidney, we have you in the expert chair. And so my question for you is, the structure of a board has existed for a while now. I don't know the full history of it, but it's something that people are familiar enough with as part of corporate governance or whatever. And do you see any ways that we can innovate on the role of a board in a way that helps more people understand the potential of this? Not every grandma like Josh is talking about, but can we go from whatever percentage of folks are building software now? Can we double that? Can we get more people involved?
Yeah, I think definitely the short answer is absolutely yes. I think this whole space is about like innovation, and everything, all of the systems, but that's evolution. I mean, the way things work today, right, is probably a little bit better maybe than they worked, 150 years ago. I don't know. But we're at another kind of inflection point as far as the technology and our social systems, how they work with each other. And I absolutely agree that there's going to be some ways to run a board in a different way, and that can look like how the incentives that are there, the feedback mechanisms that you have in place, a clear articulation of the vision of the board, where the organization is going. So I do see blockchain being able to help facilitate just kind of more efficient governance of an organization.
So Izu has some opinions as to how to bring blockchain to Africans. He says to bring blockchain to 50% of Africans is to go traditionally. If we go into formal education process, it will not sync. So because most Africans don't read, most especially the complex nature of blockchain, also to float the campaign outside of the consciousness of the government in Africa. And he says, why he said to float the campaign outside of the consciousness of the government of Africa is because the nature of blockchain will make them lose business. So I think just to summarize, is to go against the formal routes, essentially because the government won't support that, and you have to somehow go traditionally.
Blockchain is grassroots. I mean, it's like that's what it is at its core. It's grassroots. Yeah.
Hopefully it stays that way. There's no guarantee.
I mean, I think it already is. Okay, so you talk about corporate governance and board of directors, right? Tell me how a board of directors and the whole ability to vote on different proposals at that board level isn't just built into the token. Like I was having this conversation with someone in a chat yesterday. They were like, we should, remove all the whales from Cardano, all these people who own all the token. But guys, it's like, by owning and buying this token, you are the board of directors. You are, the governing body of the protocol, whether it's Cardano, Ethereum, or any other system, right? So, limit to systems that actually have on-chain voting and tied to them. So maybe not. But like Cardano or Tezos, any of these Web3 cryptos, you're the board of directors just by holding the token, right? You're also the owner of this equity-like property that has upside, to infinity, right? So there's that whole concept of tying those things together in a new asset class that's never been done before. It's almost like you have you had a stock and then you had a way to introduce like a complete like board of directors governing body into that system and just combine those things into one. Not very different than how it works today in corporate governance. When you really think about the inner workings of those whales who actually own a lot of the stock of these companies, what that means for them voting rights wise when it comes to different, board proposals that get introduced over time. Tell me how Cardano is any different. That's why when Sidney says it's grassroots, I'm like, I get that. Like, I don't understand how we think that we can make it any more grassroots than what it already is. Like, if there is a way, I'm open to hearing it. I totally am, but tell me how you can decentralize something that by nature you just completely decentralized from the operating model that you took before. I don't think.
For grassroots to work, people have to own their responsibility to participate in things.
100%.
Right? So we have to show by example
100%.
what the level of participation is.
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking in terms of making it more grassroots, but I am thinking about it in terms of, I hope it's this much grassroots 10 years from now, 50 years from now.
Right.
Right?
Well, think about it.
There's no guarantee that it's going to stay that way.
Well, there is, though. The guarantee is incentives, right? The guarantee is crypto incentives, because think about this. If you're a whale, if you hold a lot of ADA, right? Or if you're any other crypto and you hold a lot of governance voting power, your incentive to participate is very high. The only way you can make number go up, the only way the future value of that protocol, whatever it is, Cardano or any other system, it's all tied to the proposals that you introduce, how you upgrade and maintain the system into the future, how you manage the community and the ecosystem, the infrastructure that you build around the tech. Software and code is just one thing. Anyone can hire a few smart Haskell devs or a few smart JavaScript devs and build some cool code that people want to use, right? Building community and infrastructure, that is where all value actually lies in Web3 and crypto. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like, by means of doing that, by means of having governance built into your token and into your protocol, you're saying the incentives are so strong for the people who actually own the protocol, who want to see future value driven to it, that they're not only going to participate, they have the strongest incentive to participate honestly, to participate in quality and time, and to make sure that the proposals getting pushed through are of the highest quality for the future of the protocol. So I don't buy this whole thing of, the whales aren't going to vote. They're going to be too lazy. It's too, no, they have the largest incentive, way more than any of us, because, making
the whales want to get fatter.
Exactly. It's just
they don't
natural economics. Yeah.
And they're disincentivized to screw the protocol, because that value, that's one thing that's not guaranteed, is the value.
Right.
The value is the network and the people in the network, right? So if some whale or two whales or three whales decide they want to screw the network, basically at the end of the day, the way that game theory works, they're literally screwing themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean I think that debate about whales is what it is, and that's that's going.
It's more a debate about incentives than it really is about whales. It just scales when you own more of the protocol, right? Like,
absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, James, to come back to what you are saying, there is always that risk. What if things become more centralized than it is now? But we should also look at the other side, whereby when we have, say, Atala Prism, right? And we're able to bring more people, like we go to a village in West Africa, we have a goat herder. He has all these goats, and we're able to somehow cost the goats, how much that costs, and put him onto the blockchain. Like when we talk about land, let's think of all the natural resources, the agricultural resources in West Africa. So there is just that big potential to actually bring all these people onto the blockchain. Like now, when you look at, the other time I was talking to my mother, and there's this village, in Ghana, and they grow lots and lots and lots of plantain. Some of us might not know what plantain is, but they grow it, and then it goes. And the problem was that it's just, like it was going to waste, because it doesn't take too long and then it starts rotting. Imagine that we were, we've done our Atala Prism, we've done our Atala Trace, our Atala Scan, and there's a way that we could actually get this on the world market. Now the subsistence farmer who is, it's really, really poor now, who knows, they might become a whale. And if this farmer has, a grandchild or a child, who is a developer or whatever, and it's just, it's sending businesses to the edges, right? And we will never know who is going to be the whales of tomorrow. When we look at the kind of resources that we have in West Africa, in Africa, in some of the poorest countries in the world, and even some of the skills. I remember, Josh, we were talking about how skills that people have, like you give them a phone, or you give them a car, they will repair, like some of the mechanics here in the Western world, they will, the kind of thing that some African guys in some corner somewhere can do in terms of bringing things back to life. You know, some of the people in the Western world are not able to do that. What if we can actually, you know, cause these or bring value to these people with all these skills? You know, that is, you know, in my blue sky, that is what I'm seeing, you know, down the line. And then hopefully we wouldn't have to worry about these whales, because now there will be some other whales, because they have also been able, you know, their value has also been able to be captured in this decentralized blockchain world, right?
That is why we need WADA.
Thank you.
Right, because it just doesn't happen. That won't happen without effort, right? It's not a foregone.
It will not. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it does need some effort. It does need some boots on the ground. It does need some thinking. Yeah. No, go.
Just because you own Ethereum doesn't mean that you own Yearn, or just because you own Ethereum doesn't mean that you own some other protocol. So Cardano in and of itself, there's the base layer protocol, but there's going to be a lot of projects that are built on top of the protocol. And just because you have ADA doesn't mean that you have Liquid. You know, just because you have ADA doesn't mean that you have some other token that's attached to some other you know, value creation transfer system. So you can be a whale with Cardano and you can have a lot of ADA, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have the bulk of the value, you know, of one of the projects that sits on top of the protocol. So there's a lot that, you know, there's a lot there that I think at the end of it, you know, I think one of the things that I keep thinking about is this space has exploded with creativity, you know, and there's a lot of ways that people are solving all kinds of problems. And the idea that we have with WADA is a problem. How do we govern the organization in a way that's inclusive and that solves the problems of the vision of the organization? And so blockchain is just going to be one of those, one of many you know, infrastructure pieces that we have that go into place in order to be able to do something like that. I still think the exciting thing is that we can do it now. Like we can actually like dream of that, and there's an infrastructure in place that will like let us put boots on the ground and action towards our dreams to actually get there.
So I think I have a good question to end the show with. So like, just a thought experiment. If everyone in the United States leading up to this election knew about the potential of blockchain, et cetera, would how would the voting work? Like, you know what I mean? Would we have the same result? And would government, is that something government would necessarily like just open themselves to? Do they
Not yet. I think it's too early. It's again, it goes back to that, sorry to cut you, Azeez, but it goes back to that point I made earlier. The tech is just not mainstream enough, trusted enough. Like to give you an example, we just competed Liquid in the Wyoming hackathon. And one of the other hackathon challenges was to create like a voting system for the state of Wyoming. And, you know, one of the guys, Tavo, who's actually in Cardano Project Catalyst, his team won that. And now I think they're backed by IBM now. And they're going to get all the support to build out this voting system. But think about that. Like, that's just like a MVP voting model that is just going to start getting some mainstream backing now, you know, maybe potentially, right? So we're super early in that adoption curve. And things like voting systems are exactly where blockchain can innovate. India is already doing it. You see it, but it's just going to take time, especially in the Western nations that are so established. And like the electoral college, for instance, it's as terrible as the voting process, but we're not going to change that, right? So
right.
That's a perfect example of things that, you know, sadly should change, but won't probably for the foreseeable future.
I think also to touch on your point, Tashoma, when you said that if everybody knew about it, would they use it? Would the government, I guess the government even allow people to use it? I think to a certain extent, if everybody knew about it, they don't have a choice anymore. Just like you see certain institutions that like maybe never had a Facebook before, but when everybody started using Facebook, those institutions had no choice. They had to create a Facebook. And that's what it'll come to, I think. It'll come to literally push comes to shove, either you adapt or you're going to fall behind.
Right.
And a lot of people do not want to fall.
100%. Yeah. I mean, think about this. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Sidney.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's happening. Really, CBDCs? What?
Oh,
this is a couple. It's a couple of years, and they're talking about having their own digital currency.
Even lower level than CBDC. Think about just government municipalities across America or Nigeria or any other country.
Yeah.
Just issuing bonds on blockchain, just using Marlowe smart contracts. You can do that right now. Like that's happening next year. I guarantee it. There's going to be a competitive force that says every other local municipality now has to do something like that. How else are they going to raise funds from a global, decentralized offering?
Absolutely.
The way you can on Cardano. It's just.
And just to throw the CBDC is central bank digital currency for anybody who didn't catch that or catches this later.
Like, what is that, CBD oil on the blockchain?
Right, exactly.
What is that madness? What is this witchcraft?
Let's wrap it up, guys. One last, Josh, say it.
Yeah. So governance right now as is, let's say democracy right now, is like a 51% attack, right? So whoever has the most vote between two parties gets, to be the government and, has governance over everybody. But that is not sustainable, as we have seen, because at the end of the day, whoever wins, that is their highest potential. That's the highest they can do. The highest they can do is to run and actually win. And we see their efforts deteriorate over time because they've achieved the most they can achieve. And that is why we have to, to Azeez's point, he's talking about we have to not depend on them to want to embrace blockchain technology because it doesn't allow them to cheat. It doesn't allow them to, what the system that they have right now is comfortable. They're comfortable with the system because it incentivizes their fraudulent actions, right? But if they don't have an option, or let's say we introduce things like liquid democracy, right? Where we can actually easily vote them out, then they have something to lose and there's no longer a 51% attack anymore because at any point, everybody can go out. So we need to push the idea, not to the government, but to the people to understand the power they have with the technology that's been made available to them right now.
Amazing.
Guys, we'll see you again next Sunday at 2 p.m. EST. Make sure to like and subscribe and to support African-owned staking pools such as Zoe Pool and Proof of Africa. Let's do this.